So there was a time when clone houses, clone fragrances were kind of just like dismissed. They were kind of laughed off, what have you. But these fragrances that I want to talk about today, these are ones that I would consider legendary because they changed the narrative. They changed how we're talking about these fragrances. Stick around, I'll give you my 10. All right, what's good, y'all? Welcome back to the channel. My name is Kevin, and you are watching Smell Goods. Appreciate you coming through. Appreciate you hanging out with me for a little bit as we talk through more fragrances, as I document my fragrance journey, but also hopefully help you in your fragrance journey as well. As always, if you've not hit that like button, hit that subscribe, request notifications. I'm just going to ask that you do that. It doesn't cost you anything, but it does help you to stay connected so that whenever I drop new videos, you get the notifications. Whenever I go live, you get the notifications. You kind of get the idea with that. Good to see you all again. So let's jump into it. Let's talk about it. Like, as mentioned, my story as far as fragrances, I had been around and, loving fragrances, but I think what really kind of got me going down this path as a fragrance enthusiast was what I call the first three, the pyramid, if you will, of the fragrances that kind of took me down a rabbit hole, right? And they were clone fragrances. And so I think that there are some clone fragrances that we can just go back and look and say, yeah, they kind of changed the game. They kind of shifted things for a number of people, right? We can have conversations about maybe this versus that or what have you, but I wanted to give you 10 scent profiles. I've actually got 12 fragrances for you, but two of them, there's two pairs where they're pretty much doing the same thing. So I thought I would just include both options for you. All right. Now, I don't think you can really start having a conversation as far as legendary clones without first talking about the one that kind of really, I think for many people, kind of set things off. I'm talking about, and it's doing its take. Let me just say this, it's doing its take of one of the most popular and probably one of the most cloned fragrance that's out there, at least until, who knows what else comes out. But we're talking about Creed Aventus, right? That's been cloned. I think everybody, even some designers, have their own take, their own version of it, right? But the two that I want to bring up, because again, they're the same scent profile. The first one is from Armaf. This is Club de Nuit Intense Man. And yes, I know there are several others. There's the Parfum, there's the different flankers that there are, right? But when we're talking about, whether we're talking about the Parfum, we're talking about whatever, the Club de Nuit Intense Man line definitely changed the game. I think it was definitely one of those things that kind of put people on notice as like, hey, that smells good, right? So again, we know that there's always going to be some flack, what have you, but we've got to admit this one is one of those that changed the game, right? Now, its partner is Twin, the one that is doing the same profile just from a different house, that I think also just needs to be included as a legendary fragrance. We're talking about Supremacy from Afnan, Supremacy. And this is, again, just their take on Creed Aventus. Me personally, I prefer the Club de Nuit Intense version of the Club de Nuit version over the Supremacy version, but they're both doing a nice stab at it. All right. So that's really the first one, right? And again, this is not in any particular order. This is just, I'm giving you 10 scent profile. The next one is one of the ones that really kind of got me going down this path, got me going down this journey, as it were, as a fragrance enthusiast, now collector, now content creator. It is from Lattafa. This is Lattafa Assad, and this is doing its take on Sauvage Elixir in the space, in the zone, especially for an uninitiated nose like mine was initially. I was like, oh yeah. So this is one that I think is one of those that kind of got a lot of people going, especially if you were kind of jumping in around this time. Lattafa Assad is one of those that definitely should be considered as a legendary clone that kind of helped to change the narrative. Again, Lattafa Assad. One, and I'm skipping around, I've got a few different options here. One that I think really put a brand on the map. It really put this brand, I think, on the map as it relates to being a clone house. Their presentation doesn't necessarily look clone-ish because they have nice bottle designs, or nice bottles, I should say. They present well, everything is there. but they're Clone House, right? We're talking about from Joe Milano, the Game Space line, and this is Wild Card. And this is doing its take of Lafayette Bond number 9, or Bond number 9, Lafayette Street. And in the space, definitely there. This is the one that I think really helped to get a lot of people on board with Joe Milano and the Game of Space line. I think this is the one that most people were like, hey, they got something going on there. Now, of course, after that, we've got Full House, so we've got some other things that they put out. But I think the one that really, if we're going to talk about a legendary clone, this one really introduced a new inspired take house to us that if it had been maybe another fragrance that came out and got hype, we'd been like, never, not so much. This is the one that I think kind of really put them on the map. So we're going to call this one of our legendary ones. Again, this is King of Spades, and this is Wild Card from Joe Milano. One that for me is another one that just kind of the bottle design, the presentation of it is something that kind of, I think, caught a lot of people's attention. And then the smell, the fragrance also just kind of helped to drive home the fact that it was a great fragrance. I'm talking about from Lattafa, and this is Eternal Oud. And I'll just point out that, yeah, my bottle, I don't know what's happened. I just got to glue it on, but the little plate there, see if I can get you to focus there, that's come off. So I just got to glue that back on. But yeah, I mean, the bottle design, this is doing its take on MFK's Grand Soir. I would consider this more of a twist in some respects. But this is one that I think people still, those that like it, those that know about it, are still digging even after all this time. But this is another one that I would consider to be a legendary clone fragrance, just because it helped to kind of shift the narrative that they're in the space, they're doing it and doing it well, and it lasts. That's the other thing, is that this lasts. This is one of the knocks, of course, against clones was, or inspired takes, I should say, is that many times they did not last, especially the kind you get from like TJ Maxx for like $12.99 or what have you. But this lasts, and so another one that kind of helped to change the narrative. Again, Eternal Oud from Lattafa. Next one up is one that last year kind of really caught a lot of hype, a lot of buzz, and it really had some people even questioning, do I need the OG when we've got this, right? I think the OG is still very relevant. I think though that if you're not planning on getting the OG, if you're never really looking at the OG, this definitely helps to take the place, scratch the itch, what have you. But I'm talking about from French Avenue. This is Liquid Brune, and this is their take on Altair by Parfums de Marly. Pretty nice, pretty much in there. I think one of the things that, of course, with this, and I think I mentioned this in a video, that kind of helped this was that it projects well, it lasts long, it does all the things you want a fragrance to do. It makes its presence known, sometimes even more than the original. But the original is kind of a little different situation, I think, as far as what it's intended for. But this definitely is another one that I would consider to be a legendary, even though, like I said, this hasn't had the length of time or the longevity of some of these others. I consider this to be a legendary clone that has been out. And this is, again, Liquid Brune from French Avenue. All right. Another one that for me really just takes the place of the OG for me. It's not a scent profile that I would find myself reaching for an awful lot, just because it leans a little young for me, but it still is a really good job. You've heard me probably talk about this before. This is one that I consider to be a legendary fragrance. It does exactly what you want it to do. It does a really good job of it. For some people, this is better than the OG. You choose, you make your own decision on that. I'm talking about from Afnan. This is 9 p.m. And this is doing its take on Ultra Male by Jean Paul Gaultier. For me, again, it scratches the itch. It does what it needs to do. Great fragrance, does all the, projects, smells in the space, all of that fun stuff. I don't necessarily find myself wanting to get a bottle of Ultra Male, so this will stay whenever I have that itch. It'll help scratch it. But this is one that I think changed the conversation. It definitely kind of shifted things as far as when people smell this, they're like, hey, you're good too. So this is, again, 9 p.m. from Afnan, doing its take of Ultra Male. All right. And then another one that I think I've given you, I've got a few more to give you. I think I've got 4 more to give you. If you're keeping track, keeping count. This one is one that, again, you can't mention the house that put this out. You can't mention that house without having this come up in part of the conversation, because I think this was such a big fragrance for that house. They have 2 additional flankers that have come out since then. But this one definitely is kind of like the classic. It is the one that I think many people kind of judge things by. I don't necessarily consider it a clone. It's an inspired take, a twist, as it were. But I am talking about from Lattafa. This is Kamra. This is the OG Kamra. This is not Dukan, and this is not Kawa. This is the OG one that, yeah, it's very nice, very sweet. Again, I don't look at this as a clone of Angel Share. I consider it an inspired take, an inspired twist, if you will, of Angel Share. But that's what I would call this. But definitely, either way, however you slice it, this is a legendary fragrance, a legendary clone, inspired take, whatever you want to call it, that kind of put things in perspective for some folks. There are some folks that definitely just have this. They will use this as a layering option, whatever it may be. But yeah, Lattafa Kamra. All right, sticking with Lattafa one more time, we've got their take on Initio's Oud for Greatness. And I think there are some people that still swear by this one. This one is Oud for Glory. And I'm a fan of the scent profile. I'm a fan of the DNA. And I'm a fan of this. I think this is pretty good. Now, I'm still planning on getting the OG, but this helps to scratch the itch. This is one of those that I think still kind of gets some love, gets some respect, and does what you want it to do. And again, is definitely in the conversation that we need to have as far as a legendary fragrance. It is one that I think definitely should get some love, get some attention, and get some respect. All right. Again, that is Oud for Glory from Lattafa. All right. I think that's it on this side. All right, let's make sure we wrap up over on this side. The next one is one that may have slid under the radar for some of you, maybe just because for some people there's a love-hate relationship sometimes with the OG. So the OG is Dior Homme Intense, and I'm talking about the OG, the original, the pre-reformulation version. This fragrance hits it fairly close, fairly spot on, and does a good job of doing all the things you want a fragrance to do. And it comes from a brand that is not what we might consider one of the top inspired take houses. When I say top inspired take houses, we're talking, of course, Lattafa, Afnan, Armaf, and Fragrance World, I think would be considered the top. There's some others that have come along recently that we can definitely throw into the conversation as far as top inspired take houses. But this one is from Al Watania, and this is Cayenne Classic, however you pronounce it. But this, again, is their take on Dior Homme Intense, the pre-reformulated version. And that iris just pops nicely. This flows very well off of skin. In fact, I just put nose back on this as I was preparing this video, and I was like, yeah, we might have to break that out again, just because I do appreciate that original DNA, and this does a good job of it. Again, another legendary clone to consider. Al Watania Cayenne Classic, doing its take on Dior Homme Intense. All right, and then the last two that I'll give you, really the last scent profile that I'll give you, but because there are two that kind of just came out, blew up, did the things that you want a great fragrance to do, and kind of for some people, this is like, they're like, yeah, that's the one. For some people, this makes it into their top fragrances, period, even when we're talking about having, designer niche, what have you. It's doing its take and its twist in some respects on the Aventus Absolu DNA. We're talking about first from Afnan. This is collector's edition. And I figured, we started with the Creed Aventus as far as the original ones. I figured let's end with the Aventus Absolu. And yeah, the Aventus Absolu, the Supremacy collector's edition. This is, for me, this is one of my favorite fragrances. This is one that I've already said I'll probably have to get a backup bottle of, just because I do appreciate this. I do like it. It still is something I throw on, I still rock. And I don't know if you can hear that, but it's coming down as far as the juice that's in there. But again, Supremacy Collector's Edition from Afnan. And that means that we're also going to bring up and mention the counterpart from Armaf. This is Club de Nuit, and this is Peugeot 1. And I'll say it again, I'm still waiting on Peugeot 2 and 3. Even though we got a 4, after not putting those on 4, I don't know what 4 is because they can't count. But as far as this, again, doing its take on Aventus Absolute, I think this is more truer to the original DNA. I consider Collector's Edition to be maybe more of a twist. I may have that backwards, but that's kind of how I remember it being. But yeah, this Club de Nuit Peugeot 1, I think would also be fitting to have a conversation as far as being a legendary clone, a legendary inspired take. All right, that's it. I've given you 10 different profiles, but 12 different fragrances. So you got some bonus ones in there to look at and to consider. But let me know if you've got some legendary clones that maybe I overlooked or I don't have and I have not considered. I don't have in my collection, or I just didn't think about them. Definitely would love to hear. Put them in the comments there. While you're doing that, also right below, you can go ahead and hit that subscribe, hit that like, and request notifications. There's a video that'll be right here that you can definitely watch, because I think it'll go along with what we're talking about here as well. And then we'll see you next video. Have a great one. Be blessed. Peace.